so my point to you is that whatever that system may be, and each country will have their own, or each athlete may have his or her own, is what you should use. You should not show up on the setting and make it up as you go. That, again, is a bunch of variables that you just don't need to be facing. All that should be worked out in advance. And one of the things that I would do with the U.S. team is on the night before their swim, whatever that distance may be, I'd look at the fluids that they're going to be consuming and say, okay, what's in this one, what's in this one, what's in this one? And how do you work with that? What have you been used to? And it's amazing. I mean, we've had athletes before that only drank a citrus-flavored drink. And they show up at the race site, and you say, what's that? Well, I decided chocolate would be good today. No. If what you're used to is citrus, that's what you're going to swim with today. We're not going into anything different than what you've trained to do. And that may be flavors, that may be textures, that may be all kinds of different things. But you need to take those variables out. And the communication thing is exactly the same. You know, whether you're standing on the pool deck or you're sitting in a boat talking to your athlete, what do you talk about? And that conversation should carry forward into your race with that athlete, so that you know their responses, you know what they're likely to tell you, and that even makes you more sensitive to the things that may be going wrong, because you know what that athlete's behavior typically is.
There is no medical doctor on earth who has the experience in open water swimming as Dr. Jim Miller of Virginia. Dr. Miller has done dozens of open water swims himself and served as the team physician for the USA Swimming national team at several world championship events, from the Pacific Ocean to lakes in Canada to the Mediterranean Sea. He has been on boats. He has been on shore. He has seen medical emergencies, and he has prevented many others. He understands hypothermia, hyperthermia, and the warning signs for these extreme physiological effects of open water swimming. He has researched dozens of waterways around the world for potential risks to open water swimmers and serves on FINA's Sports Medicine Committee. Dr. Miller is also board certified in sports medicine. He serves as an international lecturer in the sports medicine field. Dr. Miller has been a national team physician for USA Swimming since 1996. He currently serves as an international doping control delegate, overseeing the testing of athletes for banned substances at international swimming events. In addition, he chairs the asthma and diabetes task forces for USA Swimming. Dr. Miller has written multiple articles for publication. The topics include asthma, diabetes, training effects on adult athletes, shoulder injuries, nutrition, coaching adults, and open water swimming. Learning is a lifetime passion of his, which keeps his excitement for medicine keen. He shares this passion as an associate clinical professor for the University of Virginia, Virginia Commonwealth University, and James Madison University. An accomplished athlete, a successful physician, with a large practice in the state of Virginia on the east coast of the United States, a former president of United States Masters Swimming, a decorated swimming coach, and a passion for safeguarding athletes, Dr. Miller is one of a kind. We welcome Dr. Miller, a true friend of the sport, to Open Water Wednesday. Your host for this exclusive presentation is Stephen Munatones. And now, Open Water Source is pleased to present your host, Stephen Munatones, with Dr. Jim Miller.
Hello, Jim.
Hi, Steve.
Hi. We're here in Open Water Wednesday with Dr. Jim Miller of Virginia in the United States, and he's going to explain to us a variety of things from the medical and coaching side that would be of a lot of interest to open water swimmers around the world. Jim, before we begin, can you explain your background as a physician, coach, and athlete, especially as it relates to open water swimming?
Yes, Steve. I actually have boards in family practice and in sports medicine. Went to medical school at the University of Virginia, and currently am an adjunct professor at both University of Virginia as well as Virginia Commonwealth University. My contact with swimming is a long one. Started coaching actually when I was 19, and then coached through college and through medical school. And then following that time frame, in that process, was still competing actively as a master swimmer. And then became interested in open water swimming. Was actually selected as the first team physician that traveled with the U.S. team to the World Championships in Perth, Western Australia. And that, as you probably know, was in 1998. And with that first trip, as a first team physician with the United States team, became actually the one that went with the team for pretty much all of the open water events over the next decade, with a few exceptions. In that role, also, I continued with my coaching, in masters. Some of our master swimmers became quite adept at open water swimming, and coached them actually to U.S. nationals in open water also. So continued the coaching realm. As far as an athlete, I'm basically a sprinter by genetics or interest or whatever, but for some reason in open water I do fairly well. So have competed in open water myself on things on the East Coast now for the last 15 years.
When you, Jim, when you were traveling the world with USA National Swim Team, what, other than Perth in 1998, what other venues and countries did you travel with the team?
Pretty much most of them, from the standpoint that I was in Perth, Western Australia. I also did Barcelona, Spain, Fukuoka, Japan, Montreal, Hawaii championships. There was another open water championship in Dubai. And that's pretty much sums up most of them.
Okay, so you were in everything from the Pacific Ocean to rowing basins to the Mediterranean.
That's correct.
Lakes. As a physician, was there anything different that you had to think about when you were in these different bodies of water, responsible for athletes at the ages of 16 to 26?
Well, actually, that's an interesting question, because the athlete ages, I think the oldest one we ever had go to a world championship was a firefighter that we actually had do a 25K, and I believe Andy was 40 at the time. Yeah. But anyway, I think that the thing that's unique about open water is there's a whole spectrum of issues that you cannot control. And that's just inherent with the open water setting. You can't control where the waves are going to be, or where the wind's going to be, or how many clouds are over the sun. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you have to remain flexible with. However, the more flexibility that the venue may confront you with, the more prepared you have to be for those things that you can control. So if I'm heading off to an event in a facility, in a location I'm not aware of, or I have never been there before, I do extensive research on what type of fauna and flora are there, what swims in the water, what walks on the land, what can you pick up, what can you not pick up, what types of venoms are in those stinging nettles or in that coral, or what may be floating. A great example of that is a species that's found pretty much worldwide called Portuguese man-o'-war. On the East Coast, these are the brightly pink-colored floats that we see that are up to 20 to 60 centimeters across. And can stick out of the water as much as another 15, 20 centimeters, if not farther. But the tentacles that come off of these things can be many, many meters long, and in some cases as long as 20, 25 meters or even longer, so that you don't necessarily see the jellyfish that you've gotten into. In Australia, they have a Portuguese man-o-war. It's a much smaller float. It's a much shorter tentacle, but the venom off those things is nonetheless just as extraordinarily painful. So that's an example of a species that appears worldwide that looks different, has different capacities, length of tentacles is different, and your response to it needs to also be different. So in each body of water, what types of things are you likely to face, and be prepared for being able to spot them before they get to the athlete? Or if they do get to the athlete, how do you respond to the discomfort that the athlete may have? And is it only discomfort, or can a large number of stings be dangerous to the athlete? So that's just one animal species, and you could go through that from snails to things that swim to anything else that's out there. But you need to be prepared, and you have to be prepared for the site.
Wow. So basically, every time you travel to a different body of water, what you're putting in your medical bag could be different.
Exactly right. Okay. That's exactly right. If you're swimming, if the swim is in a rowing basin, well, you're not likely to get a whole lot of things that are jellyfish and things like that. But then you're going to contend with the seaweeds and the algae that may be present in those rowing basins that you wouldn't necessarily see in the open water.
Wow.
Because the water there may, well, by definition, needs to be stagnant. It's supposed to be a flat body of water, of course, for rowing. And so things will build up that are not able to flow through. So we had a world championship in Montreal that was done in a rowing basin. And the rowing basin, under normal circumstances when no competition was going on, basically was open to the St. Lawrence River. So there was a flow through it. However, with the competition, that was shut off, as it always was for competitions. But in world championships in open water, they may go on for up to a week. So by the time the end of the week came, the algae had changed, the flora had changed, the seaweeds had grown tremendously because they had not had the friction of the water. The fish were less active, and in fact you were actually seeing changes in the fish coming to surface because of oxygen needs, all because the natural flow of things had changed. In Beijing, you had a synthetic basin, just like we're going to have in London. And so that's not one that is dependent upon flow to keep the homeostasis, if you would. And that's a set body of water that's intended to be that way. In Beijing, of course, that was a filtered body of water, which was a unique thing that the Chinese were able to pull off.
Is there any? So you're a physician and you know all this. Is there anything that a non-physician, a parent, a coach, an athlete, should be aware of that they could take with them on these different trips if they go overseas or even domestically to a body of water that they're not familiar with?
I think obviously the answer is yes. And how do you educate yourself is you have to read.